everybody, my name is Miranda and it is officially that time of year where I present my favorite movies and TV shows of 2023. I may not have been reading as many books this year, which I am going to be trying to work more on in 2024, but movies and TV shows you can be dang sure I kept up with. Well, movies specifically. TV shows, I'm going to be honest, there were a lot that I started and didn't finish, but I'm gonna blame that on them for not being as good and not me just not having the attention span. Weirdly, when I was looking at 2023 and thinking about what I'm looking forward to in 2024, I feel like a lot of the movies and TV shows that I was really looking forward to this year, there's not a lot of comparable ones to next year. I don't even know what I would say is my most anticipated show or movie of next year, but I think there was a lot of great stuff this year and I'm excited to look back on it and also hear what you guys liked this year. So starting with movies, my absolute favorite movie of this year, and this will come as no surprise, is Barbie. Barbie was a moment, okay? Prior to it coming out, I was really trying to avoid anything about it aside from the trailer. I wasn't watching clips. I had seen on Twitter that Ken was potentially going to be a villain, just a tweet. That was really all I knew about it because I just didn't want to go in knowing anything really, and I also really didn't want to get my hopes up because I was really hoping it would be a good movie. Imagine my surprise and delight when I went in and it is amazing. The songs were absolutely amazing. Not just the happy Dua Lipa dancing songs, but Billie Eilish created one of my favorite Billie Eilish songs ever that always makes me cry whenever I hear it. Margot Robbie did fantastic as Barbie. Ryan Gosling as Ken is forever a meme. I think it's a defining role for him, honestly. The supporting cast was just great to see all the different Barbies, all the different Kens, to see the human world. The one Alan, everything about it was just so great. And the message I felt honestly was just getting to hug your teenage self and telling her that everything's gonna be okay, but then her also telling you that she's proud of you, if that makes sense. It healed some girlhood trauma that I feel a lot of people had, and it was just so beautiful. I mean, that end montage where they're showing all the clips of human emotions and the different spectrum of them, the good, the bad, the breaking down, the happiness, and Barbie's experiencing it all when she decides that she wants to be human. It brings chills to me and I forever will love this movie, and it is one of my absolute favorite movies of all time, not just this year. Next up we have Bottoms, which was probably tied with Barbie for my most anticipated movie of the year. I love Rachel Sennett. She is hysterical and honestly the actress of my generation, me specifically. I saw her last year in Bodies, 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 and I just think she's so funny, and the concept of this movie sounded absolutely insane and I loved it. If you haven't heard of it though, basically the concept is these two best friends at school decide to start a fight club for the girls at their school in the hopes that it'll get their crushes to sleep with them, and it's bonkers. It's balls to the walls. There's literally a football player in a cage. Classes last 5 minutes and they mention they're didn't we just get to class? And it's just so hysterical. It's bloody. It's funny. I really, really liked it, and it's got one of my favorite actresses in it too. Havana Lou Rose, I think is her name. She's from No Exit, which I loved a couple years ago, and now seeing her in this and seeing other people fall in love with her is just a pat on the back, right? I knew her first, and it's just such a fun, funny movie. I think it's one of those ones that I'll put on whenever I just need a comfort and a pick-me-up because it's just so hysterical. Like I said, there's a montage, a sad montage set to Avril Lavigne, which is just amazing. What more could you ask for, honestly? I feel we're getting to the age where people my age are making more movies, and because of that I'm seeing experiences and things that I related to now on screen, and it is real. It's a trip, I'll tell you that. But Bottoms was absolutely fantastic, and if you haven't seen it yet, because I know it kind of got released with the strike and everything, so I don't think as many people saw it or even kind of knew what it was about, I highly recommend you check it out. It's so funny. Next up, continuing the bees, I have Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is of course the new Hunger Games movie. So this is based on the prequel novel that came out after the Hunger Games was done. I hadn't read the novel actually because I was just never interested in reading from Snow's point of view. I just didn't think he was a villain who deserved a redemption arc, which is kind of what I felt it was supposed to be. But then everyone was telling me, no, it's not really a redemption arc. It's more an explanation arc of why he is the way he is and how he had choices where he could have done something different and instead still chose to go down the wrong path. And I definitely think you see this. I know people have said compared to the book, it's a good adaptation, but compared to the book, he's even worse in the book, but I mean, movie-wise, the actor and actress they cast for Snow and Lucy Gray Baird are amazing. I love Rachel Zegler with all my heart. I will be there seated for any and everything she does. And Tom Blythe was such an amazing Snow. Like, I didn't walk out of this movie feeling bad for Snow at all. I felt bad seeing the choices he made and how he could have had a better life if he just wasn't so focused on power, you know, and how that corrupted him and how he never really had the right stuff in mind, even when he did have like a great girl, a best friend, a cousin who loved him. Like, he gave that all up because he was never satisfied if he wasn't in power. Like, I left this movie feeling depressed. Like, you know that he loses in the end, but that takes 60 something years, and it's an amazing movie. Like, Rachel as Lucy Gray, just so wonderful. I'm not a huge music in movies person, so when I saw people complain about like there were too many songs in this, I got a little worried, but honestly, no, not at all. Like, every single song makes sense, and the way Rachel as Lucy Gray encapsulates it and like emotes it is so amazing. And I think also, like, as bad as you feel seeing like Snow quote unquote win by the end of this movie, you realize like he still loses in a big way because Lucy Gray is like this thing that is going to haunt him for the rest of his life. I know the argument is like, does she live? Does she die? Does she get away? But that kind of is not the real point of it. The point is that like the what if is gonna haunt him for the rest of his life. It was interesting too, I think, just as like a literary standpoint, to see like all the connections to like how we know the Hunger Games and like the glitz and glamour, unfortunately, that they are when Katniss is in them, to see like how they were then, where it was like they were on the verge of being canceled, people weren't watching them, and how a lot of what Snow implemented into these games and how he kind of became the showmanship, like how that then turned into the horror that we know what it is when it is like the 74th, 75th or all that. Like, just again from a literary standpoint and seeing like all these connections, it's horrifying. It's horrifying because it's like you're literally watching like the downfall of something that you know is about to be horrible and horrific and coming, but it is just a really good adaptation, and I do appreciate that they didn't try and redeem him. If anything, they show like why he deserves to be sad and alone, and you know how he makes all the wrong choices even when presented with people who love him and who are kind and who say like he doesn't need to be, you know, number one. He doesn't need to be rich and powerful for them to love him, how he still disregards that because he himself just can't give it up. You know what I really liked, and I do want to do like a full review of this movie because I have so many thoughts about it, but what I really liked was, and I think this sums up my thoughts about like him being redeemed and stuff like that, is towards the end, Lucy Gray says something about like, I believe like everyone is born with good in them, and then you have the option to go down the wrong path or the right path. And obviously talking about Snow going down the wrong path. I loved that because I feel like previously you always hear it be like everyone has good in them currently, and you know they can like there's good in everyone, you know, and it's just like that's not necessarily always true. Some people have tapped that out and like it's just gone. And at this point in the movie, he's killed 3 people, he's on the run, like it's just he's made bad choices, and I really like that because I think that showed that he might have been born good, but the choices that he made have taken that out of him, and there's no redeeming him at this point. And it was just such an amazing movie, and getting back into like that feeling of like, you know, middle school when you were obsessed with Hunger Games was really fun. And again, just like there's a lot of like healing going on, right, with these movies that I love. Again, this is one I kind of try to go in with as least possible knowing. I did watch the first one, so obviously I knew a lot about that, and I enjoyed the first one, but I think there were still remnants where it felt like a Spider-Man movie. Like, you know, I thought like his uncle dying, I was like, okay, that's like Uncle Ben dying. It's an origin story. Like, it was really, really cool, but at the same time, I felt like there were just too many similarities to like the Spider-Man origin story. Well, joke's on me, because this movie like tells you everything about why that is, of how there's like these multiverses and there's these certain origin canon events that are always supposed to happen, and Spider-Man losing like an uncle figure is one of them. And I was just like, it's just amazing when it's like something like a gripe you have with a movie, when the next movie tells you like, hey, actually you were supposed to feel that way, you know, like it was just so amazing. And Miles' whole journey too, I think, of just, you know, trying to be Spider-Man while trying to live up to his parents' expectations and make them happy. He's older than we saw him in the first movie, so he's kind of done some growing both as Spider-Man and as Miles, but in that growing up, it's like there's also that catch of like you feel like you're more mature sometimes than you actually are. Like you don't realize that you still have growing up to do and lessons to learn, but also like his relationship with Gwen, you know, how that was kind of tested, his relationship with Peter from the first one, how that was tested, and how these people that he loved so much and missed, how they kind of betrayed him, you know? And it was heartbreaking to see the canon events, like how this group of Spider-Mans, like not only that he was like left out of it, which is heartbreaking in general because it's like he already feels like he doesn't fit in, and then he's got this Spider-Man and now he's finding out, oh wait, I don't fit in for them either. Like that was heartbreaking. But then also just slowly the realization that like these like canon events, like they want them to happen. I'll never forget the betrayal like I felt when Miles felt the betrayal too, when he realized that like Spider-Man's girlfriend's dad that was like the chief of police or whatever, he was supposed to die and like Gwen was like gonna let that happen because that's like a canon event or whatever. Like I was like, and I love Gwen, okay? Like I am her number one, but I was like, but then contrasting that with the whole journey of Miles being like, everyone's telling me like what I should be, what I should do, who like I don't belong here, whatever. And he's like, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. Like that is just so amazing and such a good like character development to see. I loved the other Spider-Mans too. Obviously like Oscar Isaacs was terrifying, and I loved like how he got more like the animation. Animation is beautiful. Like let's be real. Like animation is, I think this is one of the best animated movies we've had in so long. The way they have like little details and everything, but I also love the way that Miguel got like more like almost vampiric in a way as like the thing went on, and as like he started to break down and realize like he couldn't control Miles, you know, and how that like got scarier and darker as it went on. I thought that was really cool. And then the end, of course, finding out that he got back but he didn't really get back to where he was, sets it up to be so like, I don't even know what's gonna happen, and they can take as long as they want with the second one, okay? Because this one was so good that part two, like, again, take as long as you want because I want it to be as best as it possibly can be. And if it's as good as this, I am definitely gonna say that this is one of, like, the best Spider-Man movies ever, period. No more. Then lastly for movies, I have the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. This one didn't do as well, which was sad. I just think people didn't really know what to expect with a D&D movie, but it was so funny. I feel like you could really tell the love that everyone that created this had for D&D and for the material, and it really felt like a fun adventure movie. I like the incorporation of like using D&D mechanics but kind of shifting them a little just so they made more sense and were kind of more understandable on screen. But I also feel like there's a lot of stuff that like people who play D&D will recognize as like them acknowledging like the fact of you can only ask 5 questions, and then like how do you manage to ask those 5 questions without actually making sure that you don't ask questions you don't need and stuff like that. I think the party coming together was really fun. I loved the found family and that Holga and Edgar weren't like a couple ever. It was just like, you know, they were parents, but they were platonic best friends, and I absolutely love that. Doric, I thought was so cool, and the way they like incorporated her shapeshifting and everything like with that was really cool. I liked Simon, how he was kind of like this really strong sorcerer, but also like had this mental block of like he didn't believe himself to be a strong sorcerer. The practical effects they used were amazing because I definitely think if they had relied too much on CGI, it definitely would have looked like just not realistic, if that makes sense. Like as realistic as like D&D can look, but I feel like using practical effects made it look so much more cool, and I just really liked that. I'm sad that it didn't do better so we could get more adventures with them. I also want to see more of I can never say his name, Roger Jean, the guy from Bridgerton. I want to see more of him because he was so funny and I loved his interactions with Edmund. So yeah, disappointed there's not more, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's again a movie that I'll throw on whenever it's on TV. Like I'll stop and watch it. It's just so cute. Moving on to TV, I have a lot of TV shows I loved this year. First up was Queen Charlotte, which is the Bridgerton prequel. I loved this more than any of the Bridgerton seasons, okay? Like, I thought it was so well, and for it to be like a quote-unquote original season was so amazing. I think streamlining it down to less episodes worked, and focusing more on just a couple of storylines instead of like all these different characters worked so well. The leads as Charlotte and George had such great chemistry, like honestly tied with me for Kate and Anthony as a favorite Bridgerton couple. I just think you rooted for them so well, and like literally from the moment they met when she's trying to escape over the wall not to marry him, like you could see him fall in love with her. I also think how they portrayed King George's mental health was very well done. That easily could have been dramatized or scandalized or just made to be like a plot point of the show, but I feel like they did a good job of showing how people with mental illness were treated back then and how there's still a stigma around it, you know, even on the person themselves that's struggling with a mental illness. I know we all love Anthony's "You are like the bane of my existence and the object of my every desire," but Charlotte's speech about like, "I will stand between heaven and earth when you don't know who you are and remind you who you are," that's up there for me. Next up, I have XO Kitty, which is another spin-off of the To All the Boys I Loved movies from Netflix. This had been in the works for a while, and I honestly wasn't even sure if it was still happening. But then at the beginning of this year, they started announcing more stuff, and lo and behold, it did come out. This show, man, is amazing. It's fan fiction come to life, basically, because all the tropes you love reading on, like, fan fiction and Wattpad growing up happen in this. It's so dramatic and like funny. Kitty herself is just such a lovable character. All the characters are really cool and really well fleshed out, and I feel like even the ones you don't like in the beginning, Minho, come to be people that you really root for and see like the full dimensions of them. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen specifically with the love triangle square we've gotten set up. And I mean, the plot twist of Kitty being queer, I don't think anyone saw that coming, and yet we were all going feral, you know? Like, it was just so cool to see that addition, and I'm just excited to see where it's going to go in the future, because I think it was really well done and really fun, and if this is, like, what we're going to get from Jenny Han with this and The Summer I Turned Pretty, I'm ready for her to write, like, 5,000 more shows immediately. Next up, I have Outer Banks Season 3, which, let's be clear, it wasn't the best season of Outer Banks. I don't think any season of Outer Banks has topped the first season in terms of, like, storyline and just, like, how it took off. But season 3, I do think I put on this specifically for the last couple of episodes when they were treasure hunting specifically, because I think that really focused back down to like the core of the show. Like, it was just Johnny and Sarah really looking for this treasure. It felt like an Uncharted movie, which was amazing to pull off on like a TV show budget and everything. And I think just that full conclusion of everything that we had started with in season 1, you know, redeeming like his father, finding the treasure, them all working together to restore like their family's legacy and everything like that, was just really cool to see. And yeah, I was on the edge of my seat, like when they were treasure hunting, like they had to like jump the gaps and like use the flares. Like, it felt so Tomb Raider Uncharted-esque that I really, really appreciated it. I am a bit nervous because I almost feel like it should have ended with 3 seasons. I think this ended on a good note of them being like, you know, they found the treasure, they, you know, restored Pope's family's name. John B got to show his dad, you know, like everything he had worked for was real, and he got that validation. Now they're going to move on to like just being hired to find a treasure, and I don't know if that's going to work specifically as well, just because it won't have the emotional connection, you know, when like things start to get really rough and tough. I feel like it's more believable when it's a treasure that like you're connected to, that you feel like your family's been robbed of, or your dad's like devoted his whole life to be like, okay, like we're gonna keep pushing. When it's just a random treasure you got hired for, when goons start coming for you and things, I think it's a little less believable to be like, yeah, we're gonna keep going for it. So I do feel like this could be the last like really good season we have, but maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not. We'll have to see. Next, I have Jury Duty, which was such an unexpected show, and if you haven't watched it, you definitely have to. So the premise is that all these actors are hired to play on jury duty, except one person doesn't know that it's fake, and everything that happens throughout like the jury, throughout the trial, everything outside of that is kind of constructed just to see his reactions to it. It's such a funny show. The guy that is playing the like non-actor is just such a nice human being, and I feel like watching the show, like everyone agreed, just made you feel so good that there were good people out there. James Marsden also did a hysterical like over-characterized version of himself that I loved, and just all the reactions to everything that happened, all the actors who were playing, like how they played into it and how they played off of it. I mean, it's a great look at improvisation, because as much as like they did plan things out, there's still like improv, and just seeing how this one regular dude reacts to all these situations is just so amazing and so funny. And if you have not checked it out yet, I highly recommend you do. It's really fun, and it's really heartwarming too. Next up is a show that hasn't been out that long, but it's been so good that it's going on this list for sure, and that is Percy Jackson and the Olympians. As of now, only 3 episodes have been out, but it's just so good. And it's also great because we had such a bad adaptation of it like 10 plus years ago or whatever, that now to get a really good adaptation, I think honestly, again, healing something. Like, it's just, you rarely get second chances at book to movie adaptations, book to TV show adaptations, and to get one where the author's like, you are not touching this unless I have full say over it, shows you why authors should have full say over the adaptions of their books. It's so fun, it's so entertaining. We haven't even really gotten into the whole big story of it yet, and it's already so good, and I'm just so excited to see what the future has in store for it. Next up, I have One Piece. Now, I hadn't really heard of this, and I wasn't really gonna watch it, but my brother is into anime, and he wanted to watch it, so he watched it, and then he was like, oh, I think you would really like it. I did. I loved that. I think the characters and the whole world is so interesting. I love an ensemble cast, you know? So like even though like Monkey is like the main character, the ensemble cast, Nami, Zoro, like all of them are just so fun. And I love the kind of like there's an overarching storyline, but there's also like a not monster of the week, but like skit story of the week, I guess, even though like you can binge watch these. Like it felt more like an old school kind of show with like a new school budget, and I just really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see when it comes back. I'm sure it's gonna be a while, but like I was literally crying. I did not think I'd be crying by the end of the like one starting it, but it was just so good and I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to see more of what they have in store for it. The last show I'm going to be talking about is The Fall of the House of Usher, which is kind of, you know, a moment because it marks the end of Mike Flanagan's time at Netflix. He had Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, Midnight Club, and now The Fall of the House of Usher marks his last one before he moves on to Amazon. So it is the end of an era, and I think it was a great end to end on, if that makes sense. It's based on the Poe story, The Fall of the House of Usher, but there's also a lot of Poe references and inspirations sprinkled throughout. It's based on this family who has basically amassed a huge amount of wealth on the backs of the opioid crisis, and one by one the kids of the Roderick Usher, the like main, I was gonna say matriarchy, but that's a woman, the patriarchy of the family, start to die in terrible and horrific ways, and Roderick Usher and his sister slowly realize that this might be some kind of comeuppance for a deal that they had made when they were young. And it's just really interesting to see like a show where they're not redeeming the characters. Like I always thought like originally based on the trailer like there was gonna be time to stop it, you know, but it was like no, these people are gonna die, and like they have all made their own choices to show why they deserve it, and kind of at the same time how they've been set up to have this always happen, and you know the heartbreak with that. It's a good metaphor I've heard people say of like, you know, rich people right now with like dealing with climate change and how they're just like doing all this stuff and being like, you know what, like the younger generation can deal with it, and just like screwing the younger generation over. It's like a metaphor for that, and a metaphor for how like, you know, the rich don't really care. Like they'll make deals that they know are going to have consequences, but they don't care because it's like they're still getting what they want, and those consequences aren't really going to affect them. It's going to affect the children or the later generation, and just every single story was so well done. So every episode really focuses on like one child, specifically like when it's their time to die, and it's kind of all based around-ish like Poe stories, different Poe stories, but it's just so good. Like the way you are just so invested in every single character, and the way that Carla, aka the mom from Spy Kids, which still astounds me, she plays Verna, who is like the one coming after them. She does so many different versions of Verna, and so well done that it is a masterclass in acting to watch her go from like this like seductive, sensual kind of party girl to this like creepy doppelganger-esque thing to like this bartender making the deals. Like it is just astounding to watch, and you are on the edge of your seat. It's quiet, you know, it's not as I think like jump scary or horrifying as some of his other ones, even though there are moments like that, but it's just like that kind of thing where you're like, I cannot hear a pin drop right now. Like you're like holding your breath just listening to these monologues because they're just so good and so like encapsulating that you're just drawn into it and like you can't look away. So I really loved it, and I think it's a great send-off for Mike in the Netflix universe, and like I cannot wait to see what else he creates. So yeah, those are the movies and TV shows that I absolutely loved this year. I need to know what you guys loved this year, if you have seen any of those and what you thought, or if there's other ones that I didn't mention here that you really loved. Let me know them down below. Also let me know what you're looking forward to next year, because like I said, there's not really like a big movie. Like this year I think it was Barbies, Hunger Games, and Bottoms were the three that I was looking forward to. Next year, I don't really know any that I'm looking forward to, honestly. And TV shows, I feel like you never know what's coming out, like, especially like with Netflix stuff. They could announce something's coming out like tomorrow, 2 days before, so you never know. So yeah, thank you guys all so much for watching not just this video, but all my videos this year. Make sure to give this one a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!